This is Secret America with your hosts, Jack Danger and James Clary.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jack Danger along with James Clary. And obviously, we're just going to jump right into it because there are some things out there, James, that are just so appalling, so enraging, that it is almost impossible not to just jump right and immediately talk about those things. So for those of you that haven't heard, and I don't know many people that have, because I can guarantee you the mainstream media is not covering this, and that's part of what we do here is make sure that you know the things that they are trying to keep secret. So, James, in Maryland right now, Democrats are pushing for HB 380, which is a new law that would make it a requirement to install vending machines with condoms in preschool, kindergarten, nursery school, and elementary schools, where not only will these condoms be in plain view for, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, but they will also be pushed on said children. And it's Democrats. So I guess the thing that's not only shocking is about they're willing to do this to kids, real young kids. But the thing I want to ask you, James, is why are they so hell-bent on not just sexualizing, but grooming children? I mean, we know most of the party, is probably most likely pedophiles, Epstein list. That's why they don't want to, release that and all this other stuff. But I mean, they're doing it out in the open, and nobody is stopping them other than to say, oh, we're going to try to not let this go through as a law. Nobody is actually, shouldn't this be a crime?
Yeah, it's when you start looking at the history of the globalist cabal that has been running our society for decades, pushing the idea of pedophilia has always been there. Sometimes it's masked, sometimes it's hidden, but I mean, there are multiple scandals involving the sexual assault of young children to be traced all the way to the George W. Bush presidency in the White House, the Franklin School scandal. So it doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, it's disgusting, it's disturbing, and just like, why would you do? And I mean, when you told me that, I kind of had to look it up. I'm like, really? Come on. But no, you're absolutely right. Nursery schools, it's insane, buddy.
It really is. And the thing is that no matter what, no matter who speaks out against this, parents come. What's funny is there was a parent that read just the other day, read from one of these books that was in, the kindergarten library. And it talked about, excuse my language for everybody that's listening, but I mean, this is in your children's books. It talked about, dicks and pussies and how, and, positions to have sex and this and that. He started reading it in front of the school board at the school board meeting, and the school board threw him out for inappropriate language. Okay, this is in the children's books, and they said, "Oh, the kids can read it, but you can't say it. It's inappropriate language." Why? Not only is it Democrats, but it's like the collective Democrat mind all over the country is we need to sexualize, we need to groom children, and then anybody that's against it is the enemy. And not only do things happen to the people that are against it, nothing ever happens to the people that are for it. Why is this?
I think it's part of a larger conspiracy, and people may call me crazy, but for 20 years I've been looking at the conspiracies, which later on we have a new segment called Conspiracy Corner. But I think it's part of a larger conspiracy to cut Christianity and any belief in any God off at the knees, and starting at a very young age. If you can sexualize a 6, 7-year-old, I mean, it's one of the most immoral actions that a human can do is to sexualize a child or to sexually assault a child. And I honestly believe, you can call me crazy, I think these people are satanic. I think they worship a god of lust, evilness, corruption, and sexual depravity. And there's not another answer for me. I mean, if somebody's got another idea why anybody thinks condoms are necessary in nursery school, I'm all ears, but I can't think of one.
No, and I completely agree. And it's no surprise to find out that this is happening in Maryland, where, it's no different than, Baltimore, Maryland's no different than Minneapolis, Minnesota, where, they're a completely 100% liberal and are willing to take on the most radical policies there are in exchange for money. I mean, you look at people like, I can guarantee you that all of this, I mean, I don't know how much they believe in it, but the higher ups in the Democrat Party obviously believe in it. They are doing the satanic rituals at the Bohemian Grove and things like that. But let's look at, like, say, Hakeem Jeffries, right? When he was brought into Congress, he had a $26,000 net worth. Now it's over $22 million. Now, you become a public servant and somehow your net worth increases by 1,000%. It's because they are willing to pay these people to push these radical agendas, whether they believe in them or not. And that's why, James, I think the biggest decision by a federal judge has been made just recently, where the federal judge actually ruled that Trump and Doge can now dismantle USAID. The federal judge ruled on that just recently. The restraining order has been lifted, and they are now allowed to dismantle USAID, which, while only 1% of the federal budget, I do believe that was the conduit used to be able to facilitate these horrible policies and make these people rich in doing so, James.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's, I'm going to find her name. There's a gal on Twitter who is a courtroom reporter she's Margaret Cleveland. She's at Prof. MJ Cleveland. Anyway, she's been following these court cases very carefully. And she made the point, Jack, that you and I made last week. It appears that Donald Trump and his team have been in very detailed, intricate planning. We all know how hard he works, right? Here's what I'm going to say. Since November 5th, 2019, when the election happened, 2020, when the election happened, it was the inauguration of Joe Biden was 2021. They've been planning this. They have been playing 4D chess. They've anticipated every legal move. They knew when they did certain things that immediately lawsuits would be filed by the other side. They already had their briefs prepared. And Margaret Cleveland, who sat in the courtroom of the case you just mentioned, she said, I am stunned at the preparedness of the Trump team. It seems like they anticipated every move and their arguments were completely undeniable. So I don't think they've done anything that they don't think they can win in court, even in front of liberal judges, and it's pretty amazing, really, the legal strategy.
You're absolutely right. It really is amazing. And they have definitely been planning this for years because their arguments are sound. I mean, look what they did with Doge. They just repurposed another office. Rather than having Trump create one out of thin air, they repurposed one that Obama made because, it's airtight. They just repurposed. It was literally, an IT agency that they just repurposed, and they just made the IT's agency's new mission to use IT to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse. And the amazing thing is, well, what I love the most, let's say, is that since this is Trump's last term, unless what I've been hearing, congressmen are actually going to try to get it to where he can, go for a third term. We'll see how that happens. I don't think it will personally, just because, let's say, for no other reason than, his age. I don't think he's going to want to do this 4 years from now. But, J.D. Vance, I will say, is positioning himself to be the next 2028 president. But that's beyond, that's not what I'm talking about here anyway. But what I wanted to say is that since this is Trump's final term, not only has he been incredibly prepared, but he has hit the ground running, and he has done a masterful job of, what he's doing, James? He is throwing hundreds and hundreds of executive orders and laws and this and that and memos and everything. So that way, the Democratic Party cannot focus on anything in particular. It's information overload where they're kind of split. Oh, we want to focus on this, we want to focus on this, and we want to focus on this. So I don't know if you noticed the block Kash Patel, quote, protest the other day, right before his vote for confirmation. But there was 5 congressmen there and literally nobody else. There were no protesters, nothing else. It was just Adam Schiff and then a few others that, obviously will most likely be arrested.
from the
via
Senate.
cash.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there was no protesters, no nothing else, because the Democrats don't have a singular issue to focus on. It's hundreds of different issues. And the main reason I love that this is Trump's last term is because he can do whatever he wants. He can say whatever he wants. And in that vein, I have this video, James, and it's last night, or it was either last night or the night before. Trump was talking at this state dinner, where, most of the governors were there. And the governor from Maine was there, who, despite Trump's executive order of you needing to keep transgenders out of female sports, this Maine governor is still allowing them to play in women's sports, despite the fact that they might be losing their federal funding.
Right. Before you play it, I want to give a little background to this, because before this clip came out, the day before, I had been researching and listened to a couple long podcasts about a Maine pole vaulter who was a boy. This girl who went on the record, one of her teammates came up, who was a pole vaulter. Her teammate came up and said, "There's a boy on the other team." This was at the state finals, Jack, or at the semifinals, state semifinals in indoor track and field. She said, "There's a boy on the other team." So this girl spoke out about it, and that's the reason it even came to the attention of the White House. So the boy had placed 5th in the boys track and field the year before, and he won the state semifinals. So with that in mind, continue.
Yeah, and that's exactly why. See, it's so easy. Like me, for instance, if I'm in high school, and I'm not doing too well in men's sports. Let's say I'm 6'1", in men's basketball, that's short. That's short in men's basketball. But say I just wanted to identify as a woman. I'm not changing anything about my body, my mindset, nothing. But I want to identify as a girl because, I could lead our team to the state championships and possibly get a scholarship in women's basketball, maybe go on to play in the WNBA as a 6'1" man with nothing other than me saying I'm a woman. So that is what, like James just said, that is why all of these things have been happening. Trump put out the executive order saying that men can no longer compete in women's sports. And then this came about the other night, and this was an exchange between Trump and the Maine governor, because the Maine governor kept saying, we're going to keep allowing them to play in women's sports. And then this is what happened. Take a listen. Whoops. That was the wrong. All right, here it is. I apologize for that.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it, because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
I love that. Enjoy your life after governor, because you're not going to be in elected politics. What were your thoughts, James, when you saw that video?
Oh, I loved it, particularly the fact that I had just read about this boy winning the pole vault. I was infuriated. And by the way, Washington, we need to make sure that people know this. Washington State, not D.C., a similar situation happened. And Jack, you were talking about basketball. There was a girl playing a team in, I can't remember what town. It might have been Olympia or near Olympia. I think it was a small community. And one of her teammates said, "Hey, there's a boy on the other team." Well, it turns out that girl told her coach she wasn't going to play. She was a starter, and she sat out in protest. And there's a podcaster who's a local journalist in Washington. Her name is Krause. I can't remember her first name, but Cruz. I met, might be Alicia. Anyway, Krusn. She did a great podcast, and she had the trans boy on the next day. And this boy, his father and the father voted for Trump. And the boy was like, "Look, I've had no hormones and I've had no surgery." So this is a boy who's had no hormones, no surgery. And he basically admitted, he goes, "I just suck. I'm not that good at basketball. But when I was in second grade, basically the story came out that his mother pushed him to identify as a girl starting in second grade. This is simply a gay man, Jack. This is a gay man whose mother made him start wearing dresses when he was 8 years old. It's just sickening. I think Congress needs to pass legislation that parents that do that that's child abuse. Why isn't that woman locked up? So there is a situation. You did the hypothetical. It's actually happening in Washington state. And I think Trump pulling the federal funding is just the first punch. And we have to remember, we need to push our congressman, Jack, that all these executive orders have to be backed up by legislation, because if they're not, the next president could be a Democrat and all of them could go away.
Believe it or not, some of the congressmen actually on the last floor speech were actually talking about codifying these executive orders in order to make sure they can't be undone by the next administration should the Democrats cheat enough to win.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that a lot of these, there does need to be things done more than federal funding. There needs to be laws put on the books where you're not exactly usurping state law, because the federal doesn't really need to needlessly usurp state law.
Right.
But if parents are doing these things, there needs to be something done more than federal funding stripping from schools. If schools are defying you, federal funding has got to be something more. There's got to be criminal actions taken. And that's the reason that even with all of these things going on, they will continue to happen, because criminal action, there has to be people held accountable. I saw a thing, James, the other day where this woman, right, she's a mother and she had a son and she wanted a daughter. So at 13 months old, she began transitioning him, saying that he acted like he wanted to be a female. So she said he's trapped in the wrong body. He wants to be a female. I'm making him a female. And not one doctor, not one, school teacher, not one person said, hey, this is wrong. This is child abuse. It really, all she wanted was a daughter. She got a son, so she's turning him into a daughter. And not only, it's just like illegal immigrants. Not only do these people, get to do what they want, but they also get federal and state benefits that nobody else gets. Oh, free health care for transitioning. Oh, you know what? You're not good at men's sports. Come on over here and beat the hell out of the women. Oh, yeah. You don't want to go to a men's prison. Come on over here and rape all the women in the women's prison that you want to. All you have to do is say you're a woman, and you can literally take over women's rights. I mean, there are no more women's rights, because if I wanted to go out right now, let's say I go out there. No, not me. Actually, I don't even want to put myself in this situation. Let's say a man goes out to a children's park, walks around completely naked, right? Or not even that. Let's say he goes into a children's bathroom, right? Walks around completely naked, a female child bathroom, walks around naked. Children are coming in, they're complaining, and all this. If a police officer walks in there, sees this man with his junk out and everything, all he has to do is say, I identify as a teenage girl. I'm a teenage girl. You can't do anything to me. And not one thing will happen to this person. Not only that, but they might even be tried in juvenile court. Now what I'm going to do is, if I'm ever arrested for something, I'm going to say I identify as a 13-year-old. I'm a 13-year-old boy. I want to be tried in juvenile court. So, I mean, if nowadays you can say you're a duck and they'll treat you like a duck, why the hell not?
Well, I wonder if I could identify as a 7'2" guy from Serbia and get in the NBA. I mean, look, these social contagions, and the whole trans movement is definitely a social contagion. There is such a thing as gender dysphoria, but it's like 0.001% of the population. And now
it's a mental illness. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So these things will change, but it's going to take time. I mean, it's already changing. I mean, Trump won, I think, in great part because of that brilliant ad that, Kamala is for they, them, he's for us. And, Trump is so smart because, like we've said before, he's picking the 80-20 issues. 80% of Americans do not believe that boys should be allowed to participate in girls' sports. Things are going to change, but you're going to see these states like Washington, like Maine, like New Hampshire, like Connecticut. It's going to be much slower in those states. I think eventually history will look back at this period and this trans phenomena, and they're going to look at it like eugenics. I mean, eugenics, the greatest minds of the day believed that it was proper to breed out inferior parts of the population, the Jews, the blacks, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the rage of the day. That was the science of the day. And Hitler, and it started in America, Hitler embraced it. And that's where the final solution came about. So I do think in 50 years, people will look back and go, my God, in the 2020s, those people were barbaric. They were mutilating children. I really believe that, but it may not be in my lifetime, Jack. It certainly probably will be in yours, but it's going to take a while.
It will definitely take a while. And let me tell, for everybody that's listening here, people look back on World War II and they look back, how could people go along with, I mean, you had Hitler, you had, the SS and all these other people, and then you had regular German citizens actually killing Jews, snitching on Jews, putting Jews on the trains and into the concentration camps. And then people say nowadays, how could that possibly have happened? How could you allow that to happen? But in America, the freest nation in the history of the world with a constitution and everything, it can and does happen in America. Look at the COVID thing. This thing, it was 99% survival rate. You had people snitching on people for not wearing a mask. You had people saying throw them in concentration camps. You had celebrities saying F their freedoms, not just the COVID thing, but now the transgender thing, these people, and then the illegal immigrants. I mean, all these things can easily happen in America. Now, if they wanted to, if Kamala Harris had won, there is no doubt in my mind that white people would have been further down on the totem pole. And it's very easily done through propaganda. So many people are so easily brainwashed. And the problem is the people that are easily brainwashed are also the people that will commit the violent acts. They are the people that don't understand consequences. They don't realize that their ignorance and what they're doing will destroy their country. And it's destroying people. And that is the thing, that there's nobody being held accountable, James. Even to this day, nobody is held accountable for any of this. Anthony Fauci has got to be arrested. These people have got to be prosecuted, and not just them, but the people that are still trying to have, the children, be transitioned. I mean, Gavin Newsom, these people need to be arrested. And until that happens, all the stripped federal funding, what does it matter if you find all the corruption and waste if nothing is done about it, James?
No, you're right. You're right. But look, Cash was just confirmed 2 days ago, right? So this episode will be out on Sunday. He was confirmed on Friday. You're going to see some serious investigations. There's going to be people going to prison. I mean, he said that. Trump has said that. And, look, if people broke the law, we're going to investigate it. Pam Bondi's committed to that. So I think we'll see some accountability. You were talking about how in World War II, how the German citizens just went along with this stuff. And I think that's a good segue into our new segment, Jack, called Conspiracy Corner. And what we're going to try to do with this is to give you some history of things that were thought to be conspiracies that later turned out to be true. So today I'm going to focus on a gentleman named Norman Dodd and the Reese Committee hearings, which happened in 1953 and 54. Harold Reese was a congressman, and the claim was that certain large charitable foundations like the Carnegie Endowment, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Ford Foundation, that they were somehow influencing American education. Now, you have to understand at this time, Jack, this was like during the McCarthy era, there was a so-called Red Scare. I mean, we were in the middle of the Cold War. Communism was seen as this deep, dark, evil thing, which it was. And, I don't want to rewrite history, but McCarthy, was painted as I was growing up, and I studied history, got a degree in history from the university. McCarthy was painted as this horrible person. He was actually spot on. There were communists inside the American government. But back to the Reese Committee. So Harold Reese started this congressional committee to investigate it. He hired an investigator named Norman Dodd. So Norman Dodd was a banker, and he went to these different foundations, and much to his surprise, when he met with the board members and the chairman of the boards of Carnegie, Ford, and Rockefeller, they said, well, yeah, Mr. Dodd, we'd love to show you want to see the minutes of our board meetings? And he's like, well, yeah, I'd love that. So what he found, that the first thing is that all of these large NGOs had seen, this was after World War II, World War One and World War II, they all promoted war as a method for social change. And, not only that, it certainly enriched them, but more importantly, they decided that they were going to change the university system. At the time, university professors were evenly split, conservative versus liberal, for lack of better terms. What they did is they would go to, say, Harvard. They say, okay, we're the Carnegie Endowment. We're going to give you $1 million, but we have one caveat. What's that, Mr. Endowment? We'll give you the $1 million, but we get to interview and hire the professors that are going to teach at your college. And this was completely successful. And they openly admitted that their plans were for globalists, that they had an agenda to turn the United States from a republic to part of the global community. Now, the Reese Committee never was able to completely get to the bottom of it because guess what? Democrats on the committee, including Wayne Hayes, who was a very powerful Democrat congressman from Ohio, actively worked to sabotage the hearings. He restricted funding. He mocked the findings as a witch hunt. So there was the media. This is back in the 50s. The media completely smeared Norman Dodd and Harold Reese as conspiracy theorists. So remember, this is in the 50s. Norman Dodd's testimony was suppressed. So why was it shut down? Because even then, Jack, they had this plan. And that's why this is so deep. People are like, well, how the F did our universities become filled with Marxist professors? This is how. Rockefeller, Carnegie, Ford. And look, USAID ties in perfectly to that. USAID, they're not the ones that give these tens of billions out. It's NGOs that work in concert with government agencies. So the spider web of conspiracies is huge. And I just wanted people, look up Norman Dodd. He does an interview with C. Edward Griffith. It will blow your mind. So this is one I thought was really important.
You're absolutely right. And it is very important because it shows how a lot of people would say, oh, well, these people are infiltrating our schools and teaching people, the liberal propaganda and agendas. And it all started back then. And the interesting thing for me is how everything traces back to, at least in part, to John Rockefeller, such as, today's modern medicine. Where he saw natural health as a competing factor. So what did he do? He did the same thing. He went in there, he donated money to medical schools. He said, okay, I'm going to hire these people to teach there at the medical schools. And then he basically started, the oil, the big pharma, big oil. He started, big propaganda, if you will. I mean, and it all traces back to that moment where Congress had to split up the Antitrust Act, split up his Standard Oil into 36 different companies, and he vowed to destroy the United States. And quite honestly, the impact of his vow is still being felt all over America, and it's getting worse and worse, honestly.
Absolutely. And most people don't realize that pharmaceuticals came out as a result of the oil industry. All of these drugs had a petroleum base, not all of them, most of them had a base in petroleum. And, the giant was Bayer, and they were a German company that I think Rockefeller eventually merged with. And you're absolutely right. There was a split. It was homeopathy versus allopathy. And allopathy just means treating with drugs. Homeopathy is more natural cures. And by funding and building and writing the curriculum for medical schools, he completely changed the health outlook of America. And look where we're at today, Jack. I mean, 50 years later, we are the sickest we've ever been. And, it's just another thread of these conspiracies that you and I follow on this show to today. And, now with Robert F. Kennedy's nomination, I mean, finally, we might get some relief from this effing madness. And that's what it is. It's madness. They're trying to destroy America. There's no other question.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's amazing what money can do. I mean, let's be honest. George Soros, he's a rich man, he's a billionaire, but he's nothing compared to, to a John Rockefeller, who back in his day, adjusted for inflation, was worth like $400 billion, But all that money then is still creating what is going on today. I mean, it's amazing how far that can reach. And it's all if you do it in the right positions, like in the right points, right time. Like George Soros realized you don't have to spend all your money changing laws. You don't have to lobby to get laws changed. All you have to do is to get prosecutors elected that refuse to enforce certain laws. Because if a law is not enforced, it's basically not there. So it's pretty brilliant, honestly. I mean, they might be evil men, but it's also very brilliant, very brilliant. And I will say, though, that Donald Trump is trying to change all of that with his nominations and with his executive orders. And one of the things just the other day, actually it might have been yesterday, that made me realize how serious he is with all this, James. He just fired I think it's the ICE director. The ICE director was just fired because Donald Trump said that the deportation numbers were not nearly as high as they need to be. And honestly, I appreciate that like crazy, because that shows that he's not willing to do what he did in 2016 and just ride it out and hope things get better. No, he is dead serious. 1 month in, he fires the ICE director and says the next person better increase those damn numbers.
Well, I didn't know that. I mean, it's amazing. He just replaced, who was it? The Joint Chiefs of Staff. He just replaced them. It is crazy what's going on. And, we said last week, we're in the middle of a revolution. I hope our audience understands what a pivotal point in history this is, Jack. I mean, look, you've been on the planet, I don't know how old you're, 30 something, right? And I'm 64. I've never seen anything like this. Look, I remember the upheaval in our country in the late 60s and early 70s. My brother walked out of high school in protest of Nixon bombing Cambodia. I mean, I remember these things. It is nothing like today, but I liked the fact that somebody, Victor Davis Hanson, said, this isn't a revolution. It's a restoration. And I think that's an important distinction, because a revolution is brought about to bring sweeping change. This isn't change. This is going back to what we were and I think World War II is the pivotal point. The OSS was formed. And then, of course, in 1947, when Truman signed the National Security Agreement, or maybe it was Eisenhower, but anyway, created the CIA. I mean, that's when things really went downhill. And you fast forward to 1964, when Kennedy was assassinated. All of it can be traced back to that era. And we're living the effects of that. And this is the first time that somebody has put their hand up and said, no, stop. Not only are we going to stop this march towards insanity, we're going to reverse it. And it really, I think sometimes it escapes us when we're living in history, how historically significant today and the moment is.
You're absolutely right. People don't understand that the movement we're in right now, the Make America Great Again movement, it's not a revolution. It's about making America great again, not making America great for the first time.
Right.
So we are making America great again. It is, I mean, it's everything so far in the first month. It's everything we'd hoped it would be, minus, mass arrests of, the politicians and stuff that, may be unrealistic at this point. But maybe with Kash Patel, things might change. Maybe they will actually investigate these people instead of just, doing a Pam Bondi and suing the state of New York. Maybe they'll actually arrest the governor and stuff like that. That would be, honestly, if you started arresting these people, that would be the final nail. That would make everybody change their mind and think twice before instituting these radical agendas, and would make everybody in the bureaucracy think twice before doing fraud, waste, abuse, and all that stuff. If they would just arrest, they don't even have to arrest everybody. Just arrest a few high-profile targets. Arrest you, the Adam Schiff. Arrest the Hillary Clinton. And just for fun, arrest Jasmine Crockett. I can't stand her. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if she's done nothing wrong. Arrest the hell out of her.
What a hood rat.
I cannot stand. Oh my God. But yeah, so if they would just hold these people, just a few people, high profile, accountable, do the walk of shame, the arrest parade.
Right.
Get them mug shots, right in their face, do the whole nine, and that could change everything. But people don't realize we are living history right now. We are in the middle of something, that 2, 3, 4, 500 years from now, people will point to and say that MAGA movement was the turning point for America to get back to where it is today, 300 years from now. They are going to say, we did it thanks to these people. You know how we look at the Revolutionary War with, Washington and all these other people and say, wow, if it wasn't for that, America would not be. Well, now we're going to look at the MAGA movement and say, if it wasn't for that, America would not be.
Yeah. And, it's not just, as it's not just America. I mean, look at what J.D. Vance's recent remarks about Europe, Germany and the UK in particular. I mean, bro, people in Germany, I know we talked about this the last show, but the people in Germany are being arrested for memes. And you talked about the fart recording. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. It's terrifying.
But how crazy, James?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How crazy is it that it's happening in, how I talked about a minute ago, how people say, oh, in the modern world, this could never happen, with the Nazis and all that stuff.
Right.
But how crazy is it that it's starting in Germany. Again?
I know.
Again with this.
And nobody seems to see the significance of that. I mean, 60 Minutes does this fluff piece on how the German government is cracking down on online speech, on free speech. And J.D. Vance has made it very clear. I mean, basically paraphrasing, he's like, look, I think you're our friend. I think you're our ally. But if you're afraid to even let your citizens speak, I don't think we can be friends. I mean, that is the basic core of democracy that side constantly warns us about, the threats to democracy. It's like everything else. The opposite of what they say is true. If you hear the term fact check, misinformation, disinformation, the opposite of what they're claiming is true. And it's in every case. The term malinformation came about during COVID. It means information that might be true, but it has a bad effect on the government agenda. So it's mal, which just means bad. It's bad information. I mean, we dodged a bullet, man. I mean, the Twitter files being released when Elon, and think about this, Jack. If Elon hadn't bought Twitter, I know you had accounts suspended. I had 2 accounts. I had an account for me, it was a lot. I had 7,000 followers. It was, they say suspended. It was deleted. That account was gone because I called Jack the C word, which again, in America, that's hate speech. Calling someone that word, it's a nasty word, but he was a nasty man and deserved to be called that. In America, that's free speech, and Elon protects that. I mean, I used the F word a couple times in tweets yesterday at these morons that were sticking up for these trans boys and girls sports. And I do think they're effing morons and they deserve to be called that. I can say that on X now, and I'm glad to do it, quite honestly.
You're absolutely right. And did you know during that 60 Minutes interview, they actually said that even reposting something, they will raid your home for reposting something. And they actually went on these raids. I think there was like 75 raids in one day. But see, this is the thing that I was talking about, how we say, that this thing could never happen in the modern world. Well, not only does it happen, it would happen right here in America. And why? Because the police will follow the orders they are given. Like the Nazis tried
Sure.
to use the excuse, "Oh, we were just following orders." We wouldn't
Right.
let the Nazis get away with the just following orders excuse, but the American police, and as much as I love American police, they will enforce any law on the books regardless of how devastating it is, regardless of how illegal it is. They will enforce that law. So don't think for a second that this wouldn't happen in America if, say, somehow they made an anti-free speech law and everybody was behind. No, don't think for a second the police wouldn't raid your home for
Absolutely.
reposting something hateful in America.
Of course. I mean, all you have to do is look at COVID. I mean, they were instructed to go to churches and arrest people for gathering more than 10 people, or
And they did it.
They did it. Absolutely. If you think the police are your friends, look, I go back and forth on this issue, but I mean, I generally support law enforcement, but there's a lot of bad apples in law enforcement. And, particularly in the last, I'd say 10, 20 years, because you had all of these veterans coming back from the Iraq War, from the other wars, the Afghan War, coming back with PTSD. These guys are super, super high-strung, violent people. And, I'm not the guy say, oh, the police are mowing down innocent black people, but they have mowed down innocent black people and even more white people. I mean, the police, this is a whole nother issue. There needs to be some major reform within police departments across the country. And, the FBI is another great example, Jack. I just finished watching on Netflix last night the story of Gabby Petito, the gal that her fiance murdered, and he ended up shooting himself in the end. But there were two FBI agents on there, and one of them was a woman talking about this case. And then she choked up and she said, it's not just Gabby. She goes, I work hundreds of these missing person cases. And she started to tear up, and I saw her as a human, this FBI person, because I've been so loathsome of the FBI. There are good people in the FBI still today, is my point. But it's not just the leaders. People like her, when they, it has to be a point when you're given an order that countermands everything that's decent and honest and true and correct, like arresting someone praying outside of an abortion clinic or spying on parents at a school board meeting. You have to stand up. I think one thing that could be done about this, Jack, honestly, is that Congress can strengthen the whistleblower laws, because they're weak right now. They don't offer enough protection for whistleblowers.
Let me tell you something that I don't think anybody really knows, but it's also part of why they did COVID. It wasn't just to steal the election. It wasn't just to be able to, practice lockdowns and see how many people would comply and put out the vaccine that ultimately killed many people and probably still will. But this is something that many people have not thought about. It was also to usher in the defund the police, but why? It wasn't to get rid of police, James. It was because they wanted all this hatred towards the police to get rid of the good and decent veterans. Not only did they get rid of all the people that actually follow the law and can think for themselves, but then they were able to lower standards. Nobody wanted to be a police officer.
That's true.
So they say, hey, we can lower standards. We can make people, this, you don't have to score high on the test. We can get rid of this test and that test. So then what do? All over the country, they usher in people that are willing to do whatever they say. They are ushering people that could have been criminals, that could have been psychopaths, but they were never tested. These people are all ushered in to do what they say, because when the time comes, if they say, all right, you know what, I don't care what you arrest Donald Trump, you arrest this, you start rounding these people up and putting them into camps, they will do it, because these are the people that were brought in after COVID for this specific purpose, James.
Boy, that is a great point, Jack. I never thought of that. I mean, you're 100% spot on. I mean, look no further than the LA fire chief. I understand she's not police, but she is in that genre. That woman couldn't run a 60-second 100-meter. I mean, she's, it's ridiculous. I actually not trained firefighters. As a chef, was hired by our local fire department to teach healthy cooking and eating in the fire department here in Springfield, Missouri. These guys are rock solid fit. And they're a few little overweight, but just a little bit. They could carry a body out of a burning building. I think the key point, you said the standards were lowered, and that's true in every part of our society, Jack. They've lowered admission standards to college. If you're a Black lesbian, you can get into Harvard based on those two words.
Why they did lowered the admission standards? Because they can get more people in to brainwash them with the propaganda.
Yeah. And then those people can go out with the Harvard behind their name and they can be very influential. I mean, if you've got a degree from Harvard, it means something, So they've got people like, I don't know where Jasmine Crockett went to college, but the fact that she even attended college, the woman is a complete moron. Our conspiracy corner today was about the education system. We talked about, yes, the NGOs funded them to bring in a Marxist agenda, but it wasn't just about the propaganda, the agenda. It's also about the standards. These people are stupid.
Most of the children today, right now in many states, I would say 85-90% cannot read at their own grade level. But again, that's also by design. But the things that scare me the most is the police thing, because I don't think people realize how serious this is. They got rid of the people that would follow the law and would actually think for themselves, and they brought in the people that would follow orders without questioning it. They brought in the National Guard that would, shoot and kill Kent State students without question. They brought in these people because they are planning something, and it's something big, and it may be something that has to revolve around the 2030 agenda. It may be the fact that, hey, they do steal the 2028 election, and then they have to bring in all these local police to squelch it, and anybody that's against it starts getting thrown in camps. If you think this stuff can't happen in America, in modern day America, you're out of your mind. Because all they have to do, if you have the police in your pocket, if you have put these police officers with much lower standards and much less intelligence,
in the military,
and the military, and a history of not thinking for themselves and just following orders, then guess what? You no longer have to listen to the judges. You no longer have to listen to the Constitution, because it's the police that would enforce these things, that would arrest, the politicians that are, constantly committing crimes and stuff. But if you have the police, if they are following your orders, who cares what the judges say? Who cares what the Constitution says? So they can do, all you have to do is get the police, and you could do whatever you want, James. And people don't seem to realize how scary this is and how close we are to that happening.
I think you're right to some degree. There are a lot more people waking up. You have to admit that. I mean, if you would ask,
definitely.
Yeah, it's getting better. And let's just hope that I think the Trump administration, remember, we were only 30 days in. My God, what they've done in 30 days. And I was listening to an interview with, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. What's the press secretary's name?
Caroline Leavitt.
Yeah, thank you. She was on Megyn Kelly's show. And, she said, look, every day the president's asking, what do we get done today? What are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do next week? He has this pace that he's gone up for these 30 days. People think he's going to run out. You haven't seen anything yet. We said this last show, Jack, that it's just the tip of the iceberg. And Elon said the same thing. He said, you think what we found now is significant? Wait till you see what we find later. I wanted to ask you a question. One of the biggest issues that's always been on my mind, there was a book put out many years ago called The Fair Tax, and I'm sure you're familiar with the idea. The fair tax is an idea where you get rid of the income tax and you charge a national sales tax. So anything you buy, now it would exclude certain things like food would not be on there because you don't want to tax poor people. So you do they figured it'd be about between 17 and 20%. Like you go buy a TV, it costs $100, you're going to pay $120, but you pay no income tax. Then they also make the point that, look, companies right now in their pricing, income tax is figured in that. If you buy a TV from Sony, they've already projected ahead what they're going to have to pay in income tax, and they add that to the price. So if the income tax goes away, the price is going to come down. So it's actually a net net. Here's my question. Do you think Trump will be so bold? And that this is my prediction is that Elon's going to do the IRS, the Doge number on the IRS. They're going to find rampant corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse. I think Trump's going to do away with the IRS and propose something like the fair tax. And I'd be the loudest proponent. What do you think?
I actually think that is going to happen because I have heard Trump say that his ultimate goal is to abolish the IRS, and the IRS is not needed. It is an unnecessary organization. And see, at least this way, people can't lose their homes for not paying property taxes. They can't, you can't go in and raid somebody's house because they owe $500 in back taxes. Instead, whatever you buy is taxed at the national average or whatever it is, and then you don't ever have to worry about filing taxes. You get to keep most of your money, and it's a wonderful idea that I think most people would be for. But real quick, I wanted to just say real quick, James, another thing about that police thing that we were talking about, how they were lowering the standards and bringing in their own people. I think that also has a lot to do with right now. Because say these people, these politicians, comes out that they are going to be arrested for fraud. But if you have the police on your side, you can make sure you don't get arrested. They're not going to arrest. I'm just saying I just wanted to go back to that because there's so many different things that if you have the people that are going to follow your orders on your side, then there is nothing that can happen to you. But as far as the tax goes, yeah, it's a brilliant idea. I do think that it's going to happen. I don't know how soon, but if it's going to happen, it's going to need to happen before the midterms because who knows what can happen during this. You really think the Democrats are going to let themselves have another 2 years without any kind of power at all? No, it's just not going to happen. Even if, they have to make all the states, take 30 days to count votes, they will do whatever it takes to make sure that they at least have the House or the Senate after the midterms, even if it comes to using those police to round up all the politicians. Who knows? It's just scary stuff.
Yeah, so I agree. I think you're going to see, now that Cash is confirmed, there's going to be a major investigation launched into the election fraud, Jack. I truly believe that. I think some people are going to go to jail. Look, the only reason Trump was able to win in 24 is that the Trump team and the white hats behind the scenes, you got to understand there's a lot of very powerful, smart people on the Trump team, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. They exposed these systems. They knew what happened in 2020, and they were bound and determined to not let it happen again. They had people at every polling place. Look, the Bannon's War Room and Dan Sullivan's, the Precinct Strategy Committee, which was huge, where we got MAGA people into the Republican central committees in each county and each state across the country. It completely changed the outlook. And, people weren't going to allow themselves to be shut out of polling places like happened in 2020. Remember that? Where they were denying entry to Republican poll watchers. So I'm rambling a little bit. My point is this. I think before the midterms, and look, the campaigning for the midterms will start within a year from today, because the election's going to be in 2026. So actually it won't even be that long. So you're going to see a major investigation because Trump is going to be bound and determined to hold the House at the midterms. As you know, these political cycles, usually when a president gets elected and it's a new party, Biden was a Democrat, Trump's a Republican, the midterms, that sitting administration's party usually loses seats, right? I mean, that's historically, you can look back at it, it happens every time. I think Trump's determined not to lose seats, but to gain seats. Now, he's in a position right now from popularity polls that they could easily gain seats in the House. But unless and until they uncovered the fraud that's going on and, target the swing states because those are the ones that matter, although congressional elections, it's all across the country. I mean, look, I talked about Robert Corsi that I had on my other show. He found the algorithms in the election systems. They're everywhere. And this was in Florida. He's filing lawsuits in Florida. These down ballot races where, Katie Hobbs wins and, Juan Gallego beats what's her name? Arizona. My
Carrie
favorite.
Lake.
Yeah, thank you. Carrie Lake. Gallego beats Carrie Lake, but Trump swept the state. Does that make any sense? Unless there's cheating? No, there's massive cheating, Jack. I'm just hoping that we get the investigations to uncover some of it before these midterms. These midterms are huge.
Oh, the midterms are going to be really huge. And the reason that I think that Trump is going to break the trend of, the opposing party winning the midterms is got a lot to do with Doge and a lot to do with the fact that even though a lot of people don't know about it because they don't know about the website, and the people that are not on X are, they watch the media and the media doesn't talk about it. But the best part about this is since they dismantled US aid and cut the funding off to Politico, to MSNBC, to NPR, to the AP,
BBC, yeah.
these people are actually going to have to start worrying about their ratings now because they're
Right.
not getting funded by USAID AID anymore. So they're going to have to undo years of telling lies, years of all. And how do they do that? They're going to have to do it by reporting the truth. If you want ratings, not only do you report the truth, but you're going to have to start upselling people on Trump because that's what gets ratings, not, constantly lying and all this and that. But now that they're no longer being subsidized by the federal government, you can expect a lot more truth because they are going to be dead worried about their ratings, or they're just not going to have jobs. So I do think by the midterms, I think the Republicans are again going to win in a landslide because right now the USAID funding is still enough to, keep them going for a little while. But give it a few more months, they won't have any more subsidized funding, and it's all over.
Yeah, and it's not just the media funding. I heard I saw on an X feed where a Democrat, I guess, whatever, one of the leftards said, "Where are all the mass protests against this?" And I immediately thought, well, your funding's been cut off. Look,
Exactly.
those George Floyd protests, people think they were organic. No, they were completely planned. We've brought it up before, Jack. Remember the pallets of bricks that showed
Antifa,
up?
BLM, all that stuff was funded most likely by the U.S. government themselves.
USAID, no, exactly. It might have been through NGOs like the National Endowment for Democracy and the
Open
Tides
Society,
Foundations are two of the biggest targets that push this Marxist dogma. They get money from USAID, then it goes down to the street level through these NGOs. So, no, George Floyd protests were not organic, people. They were planned. What about the other one, Jack? The Patriot Front? They're going to be exposed. Those guys are feds.
Oh, they are. I mean, true patriots and Americans don't wear masks for one. But
Right.
two, we're not gonna start. We're also not white supremacists. But what I will say is that with this funding gone now, James, not only is it just the media, like you said, but it's also everybody's going to start realizing that the left has nobody on their side. I mean, even Ben Stiller, Angelina Jolie, all these supposed liberals had to be paid millions to go get photos with Zelensky.
Yep.
The left's voice was amplified 10 times over by funding to the media, funding for the protests. With all that funding gone, not only will more people start waking up because they'll see that the left was in the major minority, but the left themselves will begin to see that, and they're going to either have to change course or go down with the ship.
Yeah, I agree. And we've already seen it. Look, the two best examples right in front of our face are Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. So the leftists that have a moral compass, that have any kind of morality at all, can't help but be red-pilled. Now, look, there's people like Stephen King, who's back on X, by the way. Yay! He put a big, "I'm back," like, you freaking douche.
Oh, yeah, I sent him a tweet that got some good luck. It was funny.
Yeah, so, look, people are being red-pilled every day. It's one person at a time. I mentioned to, our friend Deborah Ultra MAGA. I'll give her a shout out. She's awesome. Maybe our biggest fan,
Super fan. I love it.
Yeah. She sent me a DM, was talking about how she's changed one of her friends' mind. And I replied back, yeah, there's a girl I work with who was a Kamala voter and da 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 da. But I sent her a couple interviews, like the one about USAID, and she was stunned. So we can't look. This show is our attempt to do that. We hope people on the left listen to this, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why we're not just doing it for an echo chamber to, talk to the people that already know a lot of these things or already listening. We're also trying to do it for people that maybe are on the fence or are willing to have an open mind to listen,
Yes.
because the things that we say here are not only things that, the corrupt media and everybody else are either too corrupt or too afraid to report, but it's also the truth. Nothing that we tell you is going to be a lie. So when you tune in here, you know that you are going to get the 100% unfiltered truth.
Well, we do our best, don't we, my friend? And for that, I think we'll wrap this week. It's been a great episode, and it's so good to see your happy little face on video every day, Jack. I tell you that. You've been listening to Secret America. I'm James Clary. He's Jack Danger. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Secret America with Jack Danger and James Clary.